Hello, Allahu Akbar, the Baha'i greeting, God is glorious. To all the people of the planet, from Americas to Europe to Asia to Africa to Australia to China. Time is right now 11:17, today is 19th of the December 2013. I'm going to continue my talks from the past. I promised last time we were talking about some of the scholars in the Baha'i religion, the revelation of the Bab mostly. There have been a lot of scholars in the Baha'i faith, but not as many as when it comes to the revelation of the Bab, the forerunner of Baha'u'llah. Well, it's a very vast, wide topics. I would have to divide the subject really into three sections. The first one, I would have to bring the Muslim scholars. These are the people who refute the Baha'i faith, the revelation of the Bab. They're coming from a convenient religion. It is very convenient for the Muslims to attack Baha'is. It's like the Machiavellism that Adolf Hitler was using against Jews. If you wanted to prove that you're a good German, he would attack the Jews and the non-Aryan, race. Both because they were rich, not all of them, some of them, and the fact that they were Semitic. The same thing is the government of Iran and Persia in general. Let's just not attack the government of Iran, really. This is the government, seems that I'm pretty sure people democratic brought it up, this revolution. And even right now, if everything goes down democratically, I believe a majority of the Iranian would like some form of Islam to be ruling their lives, maybe not their government. But scholars, there have been attacking the Baha'i faith, revelation of the Bab, ever since inception of the revelation of the Bab. And they fall themselves in different categories. For example, at the very beginning of the revelation of the Bab, there were few sheikhs, like Valianis and few others, Kermani, and that even they arrested one of the letters of the living in Baghdad, and they were using the writing of the Bab as an evidence that Bab is claiming that he's a prophet of God, a new messenger of God with new message from God, and his inspirations from God and all that. Those were those days the accusations. Bab was martyred simply because he said he's the promised one of Islam. But later on, these attacks started to change. There's a recent book that they have written about a very thick book. I haven't read it, but it's all about the attacks on the Baha'i faith ever since inception, more than 150 years. So, in the beginning, the attack was very philosophical, religiously based, but as Bab martyred by the clergies and Muslims and the government, they felt okay, just like a snake, stings, and then they want to relax. They said, we did the job. Then they found out the impact of the revelation of the Bab and Babi uprising, which resulted in 20,000 people dying. it did affect Persians in a very fundamental way. Because immediately after that, the people of Iran who were looking at the Shah or the king, they call him Zillullah, means the shadow of God on earth, they raised against him, and they had no respect for the government, for the kingdom. And they were looking for to bring freedom, parliamentarians, a conditional monarchy in Iran, where the king is not just a ruler. There are Majlis Shura, which means like a congress. So there are representatives to be there. There you can find one of those historians, a very awkward man, his name is Kasravi, who attacks Bab in a very most stupid way. If you read his books, Kasravi, he there in his book that is written about the history of the revolution in Iran, that is the social revolution, he says the majority of the representatives are all either materialists or they're Babis. So this notion that the Babis have entered the politics was in there, and that had started a new series of attack. This time, you can see the books that was written in historical book, very perverted still, but they could not deny the killing of so many people and the fact that this historic event happened, because it was so new. It was just very recent. Everybody knew about it. They couldn't lie too much. But then they start to write books and they create different kind of objections. For example, I have one book here that I remember when I just became Baha'i. I had this book. It's called Sheikhi Gari and Babi Gari. You can see that it's a Muslim book. I'll try to bring it here to see. What it says that when Bab from the prison was brought from Maku, was brought up to Tabriz for inquisition by the Muslims, by the Muslim clergies, interrogate him. He had to be taken to the bath. In Iran, the bath is public bath. It's called hammam. And in this book it says, when Bab entered the hammam and came back, I read you the exact word in Persian and I translate it. It says, اتفاقا فردای امروز مشاران علیه به جهت شستشو به یکی از حمام‌های اونجا رفته. بعد از بیرون آمدن او اغنام کالانعام هجوم و ازدحام آورده. تمامی آب خزانی حمام را فنجانی به قیمت 1 تومان از حمامی خریدار کردند. چون حکایت در تبریز منتشر شد، عوام اهل تبریز نیز به توهم افتاده گمانها در حق او بردند. It says, incidentally, the next day, when Bab was taken to one of these hammam for cleaning, the people, he says, أغنام كالأنعام, the people like jackass, that's what it says. The people like jackass people attacked the hammam and rushed into it, and they bought the entire pool of water. So it was hot water, but very dirty probably. The whole pool of water with a 1 cup for 5 tumans of those days would have been something American right now, something about $50-60. It's an immense amount of money to pay that much for a cup of water of the hammam. Why? Why would they do that? So, but my point of view is that the book actually acknowledges that. The book is written by a person, Morteza Modarrez Chardehi, whose father was one of the people that sentenced Bab to death. He was a divine. And then at the very last of the book, it says that they ask him to repent from what you're saying, that you're the promised one and Qa'im, and I will, forgive you. And he said no. And then Bab says, are you going to sentence me to death? And the father says to him that I don't need to. All the words that you're saying, it's your condemnations to death. And Bab said, but I'm asking you. And he said, yes, I am. But again told him that I accept the repent from a person such as you who is in the depth of the infidelity, that if you come back, I will still save you, save your life. And Bab says, حاشا حرف همان است که گفتم جای توبه نیست. Never. The word is what I have said before. There is no place for repenting. And on the second copy of the same book, they changed it. And this word that I have said, never, I have said this word before. They changed that word. But still, even in this copy that I have here, it says that Bab said no. See, this is the page of that book. It's actually page 317, and the previous story was page 311. My point is that those anti-Baha'i books that was written those days, like this one, Fitne Bab, translation, I think, of the Miftah Bab, and so on and so forth. But after the Persian Revolution, which was the impact of the Babi revelation in Iran, it caused a social revolution that people did not like the regime anymore. Even Dennis Nacoin, a person that I'm going to be seriously talk about, he even agrees with that it did have a serious impact. But as the time goes, they saw there's more influence of this Babi faith and the revelation of the Bab, and all the people that they've killed more and more is getting inside, I will have to point here, soon after the revelation of the Bab, which Bab dies, it was martyred. Immediately, almost after, Baha'u'llah comes, as he was promised by the Bab. And when the Baha'i teaching and the principle comes along, here, at this time, Muslims were seriously concerned. Mainly for two reasons. Baha'i faith announced as a principle, founding principle, that there is equality of the right of man and women. That is startling. No Muslim in Iran, even right now, they would like to lose this convenient position as to be the master of the house and do anything they want to do to the women. For example, if a divorce happens in Iran right now, the custody of the children goes to the husband, not to the wife, right now, unlike United States and Canada. This is what they don't like it at all. This is the main hatred of the clergies and the women haters in Iran. They don't like Baha'i faith on this account. But the second major point that has caused Persian right up until now, especially the authorities, clergies, which right now they are the actual regime, to totally vehemently disagree with the Baha'i faith, is the fact that Baha'u'llah does not accept the priesthood of the individuals, no longer. There was a time that we needed priests because there was no book, so it had to be a career of somebody to go learn, read and write, and come talk to people. Not anymore. Baha'u'llah introduced democracy in religion, where people are getting elected in a city, in a country, and in a world in a democratic way by vote. And not one, but 9. So Baha'is, they vote not for a person, they actually vote for a combination of 9 persons. And that combination is called local, national, and universal spiritual assembly, where replaces the individual power. And this is totally unacceptable to all the clergies in Iran. No way. They say, well, you literally want us to give up everything. In Iran, everything is for a pay, from Ayatollah on the top to the bottom. Nobody says one word about the religion unless otherwise he gets compensated and get paid. So this is number one. You could see that was the really underlying reason for attacking Iranian Baha'is. But Baha'is as well, at the time of Pahlavi, let's just tell the truth. Baha'is, they played in their hand. There was 2 things that Shobi Effendi, on the beginning of the coming of the past regime, the Pahlavi regime, has asked, and I've seen it, it's in the book called Kanjine Hudud Ahkam. It says, my first order to the National Spiritual Assembly of Iran is that tell to the Baha'is in Iran, stay away from the women. Women, stay away from dressing like the women in the West. Western way of dressing, showing your legs and buttocks. He says, stay away from them in Iran. Do not do that. Do not go on these parties of drinking and this and that. This is, he says, if you do this, he says, the entire society will be gone. And then he says at the end, you have to learn from good things of the people of the West, not their bad things. Iranians, I became Baha'i in Iran. All of them, they were completely, especially in Tehran, now maybe in villages or places like that were different. They were totally dressing in a Western ways. Nobody had hijab, which is there. And they were dressing really, inviting dresses. I was embarrassed like hell when I was going into the meetings. I see women sitting on their chair and all their legs and everything was showing. It's just sweating in my face. I didn't know, I couldn't look at it. It was embarrassing for a Muslim to enter in something. It was too much westernized way. Then Shobi Effendi said, do not enter into the government position, especially in the army. Many prominent Baha'is, they were in the army. They give all the reason to these cockroaches, stooges, that is the clergies, bad clergies of Iran, that, okay, now we have a good reason to attack them again. Because they no longer can claim, oh, we were oppressed, we were beaten, we had martyrs. Look at them. They're joining the Shah of Iran and his regimes and the way they dress up. They completely create a picture in the head of the people that Baha'is are nothing but Westerners want to destroy our society, and they are with the brutal regime of Pahlavi. And this is the fact. This is what the Persians played into their hand. Then more attacks was coming, and I'm going to classify their attacks of the type that it was. So we didn't do anything about it. Nothing. I brought it up once. I was immediately attacked. I remember Muslim Mawahid said, do not talk about these topics. I said, why? Believe it or not, Abdu'l says, this is again in the book, the Baha'i ladies have to be covered, have to have complete hijab, he says. Dar kamal sitr و hijab. Not everywhere, he says. And iffat wa ismat, chastity. Baha'is, they don't know. The word hijab It's not really in Quran. The Muslim made it. But in the Baha'i faith, the word actually is there. Women have to have hijab. Not as in the face, but body has to be covered. Can't be inviting in any shape or form. It entices any sexuality in the mind of anybody in the Baha'i faith. That's forbidden. Baha'is don't like to hear that. They say, where did you find it? It's in the book. But you like to make up a religion of your own. It's always we do that. We reconstruct what we like out of the clay of the faith. So I was going to attack. They said, you're from Muslim background and you like to see women covered up. I said, I'm 18 years old. I don't know about this thing. But I know that this is what the book says. Now, if I'm afraid of bringing the actual writing in front of you and you're going to attack me. So these attacks that happen in the Iran and the Baha'is nowadays, they're keep trying to attack the government of the Republic of Iran for what they've done. They have to go back, look at the mirror. They played in their hand for 30 years. Abdu'l says at least every year a person has to make a Baha'i. Well, to become a Baha'i is up to Baha'u'llah to accept a person, but at least if you try once in a year to work on one person, and you'll work it anywhere somehow, at least the person would know what the Baha'i faith is. And they cannot come up with these horrendous words and horrendous things among you. It's because you don't do that. You never did anything about it. If they would have done it in Iran, 1 million Baha'i for 30 million Muslim, in 30 years, everybody in Iran would have heard about it. We would never have this current regime in Iran. Just people's mind, you know. So Baha'is are responsible for these things. There's no doubt in my mind. Tawhid says to me in a village of Seysan, my uncle, he says, was there? I've seen this uncle of his. He says they were saying that Babis, they have tail. They're like a kind of animal. That's what they were spreading. He said my uncle had to take his pants right off and says, guy, look, I have no tails. We're human. He said it was so serious, they would definitely think there is something wrong with us. So we didn't do this. And we got a lot of these things because of our own. But Muslims, they attack the Baha'i faith for their simple reason, you know. Why not? They're saying that I should mention as well something that the Baha'is are not at fault for it, is the fact that after the formation of Israel, the Second World War, all the Baha'is, the Baha'i institution had to be going to Israel. It was not in Israel. At those days it was in Turkey. But because the country was dissolved, part of it became Israel and everything was there. That also played a role into calling the Baha'is in Iran Zionist. And they didn't do anything about that either. They should have. So this is just a prelude of the matter. So if you read all of this barrage of the books, especially after this regime right now, there's lots and lots and lots. To summarize these objections and anti-Baha'i remarks to the Baha'is, one of them is the political affiliations. They try to say lots of times that Baha'is are made and supported completely by the Tsar of Russia and the Russian things. Then they found out, you know, they're looking always, lurking to see what it. Then they affiliated to the England, and then today to Israel. There are bases for these things. For example, if you read the history of the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah did go at one point to the embassy of Russia, where Majid Ahi, who was a relative of Baha'u'llah and husband of his niece, tried to help Baha'u'llah, naturally, isn't it? And the Russian government actually formally asked Baha'u'llah to go to Russia, but Baha'u'llah did not accept it. He said, no, I'm fine where I am. And he didn't accept it. And if you read Baha'u'llah's letter to the Tsar of Russia, he tells him there's no hanky-dory relationship that was involved. But Muslim, they're expecting that something that came out of Iran, it has to be only an Iranian thing. They don't understand. Baha'i faith is the manifestation of God that belongs to everywhere on the planet. Everyone who wants to become a Baha'i is welcome. Whether it's American, whether it's from Djibouti, whether it's from England, whether it's from Kingdom, whether it's from Gangsterdom, whoever wants to come to God, God says come. He would not distinguish in this manner. Then they attacked the affiliated Baha'i faith to England because during some kind of drought that was in Turkey at the time, actually Abdu'l had wheat stored and offered it to the hungry people. In this case, they were British soldiers. And as a result, the governor of England, they called him Sir. They put a ceremony and they call him Sir. But again, the story of helping of Abdu'l to the people is simply this is what he was. All his life, at around 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, he would go for a few hours. No one knows in the places that he would help all the beggars, all the poor people. At his funeral, thousands and thousands of these people, because they knew him, they came. Abdu'l never talked about it even. Because he's the manifestation of God. Abdu'l works for God. He is God in the body of a man. He would help anybody at any time. But when Lady Bloomfield in England asked Abdu'l that, I know the Queen, I could go talk to her and have her to come into the Baha'i faith. Actually, Abdu'l said no. There's no necessity as such, because we would not see this fits any fate of God. The same thing happened to Carnegie, the famous Carnegie in New York that wanted to visit Abdu'l. Abdu'l said, I cannot come personally to your house, simply because there are thousands of others waiting for me here. I could not differentiate between them and you simply because you're rich, but you're welcome to come here among everybody else. And he, of course, didn't come. So, and now they're affiliating Baha'i faith to Israel. Well, guess who sent Baha'u'llah to Israel? Your own government. He didn't want to leave Iran. You confiscate everything he had. Almost bare feet in the cold mountain of Kurdistan, he had to go to Iraq, develop arthritis for the rest of his life because he walked on the snow. And then he was in Iraq. He didn't want to leave Iraq. His poetry, he's moaning of leaving Iraq because Iraq was called Dar es-Salam. God was planning that so Baha'u'llah starts in Dar es-Salam in Baghdad. But God is democratic. When you reject him, yourself you send him to Akka, present Israel, but those days it wasn't. So he went there because you forced him to go. So you took away what God gave it to you and gave it to others. And it would have been fine under the Turkish government. But Turkish government didn't listen to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah sent a letter to the king, to the prime minister. Nobody listened. Then what happened? The regime went down. England came over. They basically dissolved Turkish Empire. And then what happened? As a result, Israel came in the Second World War, took over the land. Israel did in all the countries. They agreed that poor Jews had to have a place to live. They've been attacked all the time. Therefore, this is why Baha'i faith is there. But Israelis are not any better to the Baha'is than the rest of the people. They're just smarter. They're utilizing and exploiting the situation. Baha'is in Israel are not allowed to teach Baha'i faith. You can't teach Baha'i faith in the street of Israel. It's illegal. And their number is only like a few hundred people, 300 people or something. They can't legally work. They have to give them a token or some sort to go get groceries. What is this accusation you guys bring up against Baha'is affiliated to Israel? Baha'i faith stands completely impartial to all the people of the earth, advising the entire mankind, come back to peace, back to negotiations, serious negotiations, not rhetorical words. No rhetoric, come to something real. It advises everyone. Israelis are not listening, plus Palestinians. Baha'is are innocent in this manner that what's happening. The other objection, this is objection number one, affiliations, political affiliation. Baha'is, they don't have anything like that. The second problem that they're asking essentially in their books, anti-Baha'i books, that how is that that Bab, it's not clear who he is. It's in all of their books. Bab says, I am the Bab of Imam Zaman. I'm the representative of the Promised One. For quite some time, a couple of years, 3 years. On all of his writing, half of his writings. Bab never declared, I am an independent messenger of God or even representative of God. No, he said, I'm just speaking to you on behalf of the Promised One. Then he changed and he said, I am the Promised One. I was speaking on behalf of myself to you. And people, they thought, well, the 12th Imam is an Imam. But Bab said, no, I'm actually a messenger of God. And my books is here to revoke and cancel the religions of the past and the laws of the past and new laws have come. And then finally he says, I am the manifestation of God. If you want to see God, look into me and I am the one. So they have all kind of things that, well, listen to this promised one. First he's representative of Imam, then he's Imam, then he's messenger, and now finally he says he's God. You have to have a certain amount of fairness plus a little bit of a brain. If you don't have, go study and borrow it from others that have to understand this. Bab comes in a very poisonous society. The only one, by the way, eligible to receive the Promised One. The Shiites are the only one that they know that Imam Mahdi has to come. The way Sunnis are talking about it in a different way. But among these people, there are many, many good-hearted people. Seriously nice people. And Bab has to have saved them. This is why. He first doesn't tell them, I am Imam. Because he wants to infuse them with the spiritual power of his presence. They were all addicted. I hear the word of Karl Marx. He says religion is the opium to the society. Truly it was at that time. These people have bizarre opinions about the Promised One. Crazy ones. For example, they say, as I told you before, he's alive well after 1200 years. He's not dead, he's coming. Still they do in Iran. You see anything like that, they'll hang you. That Imam Zaman is alive. So Bab is born in there. They know his father, they know his mother. If he comes and says, I am the promised one, people say, no, you're the son of Mirza Rezai Shirazi, how could you be the Imam Zaman? People were not ready. But they were innocent. They were good-hearted people. It's much like a person approaching to a hospital to get rid of his addiction. What would doctor say that? He says, okay, you're smoking, you're drinking, you're smoking pot, and you're on the cocaine and crack and heroin. Can he call off everything in the first day? He would not do that. The person will die. He perhaps tell him that, okay, let's have no heroin and no cocaine, go on with your pot smoking, go on with your drinking and smoking. Till he gets some strength, gets some of his willpower back to him. Then tell him, okay, now the time is that maybe that you have to quit drinking, and then quit pot smoking, finally quit smoking. And the process. People were addicted to the ideas there was no way that you could tell them the truth at the very beginning. The truth is exactly what they could not handle. But Bob has not done this out of maliciousness. He hasn't done this to gain power or rule over them. End of his life, he was martyred. All of it was to save people, not himself. He was offered all kind of situation that stop this claim and we will, gloriously give you anything you want. And he would say no. We have evidences of people who were completely with Bob, like Mullah Abdu'l Yazdi. And then Bob wrote him a letter that I am the promised one. The guy threw the paper down and said, my God, my son died in the pathway of the Bob. It was all wasted. After so many years, such a learned man, he could not accept it. It was convenient to see him as a representative of Imam, not the Imam himself. This is why Bob used this process. We have it in Christianity. Jesus Christ goes at the river of Jordan. Immediately John the Baptist recognized who he is. But he says to him, no, you baptize me today. He said, sir, you have to baptize me. He said, but today you baptize me. Why? Because Jesus is using a strategy to the people that I'm confirming the message of the John the Baptist. So his followers, they know who Jesus is and they come to him because he prepared a lot of followers, creating a link. This is why he did that. In Islam, this kind of a strategy has been always around, always around. I have actually a book here to tell you some of the strategy. Bizarre strategy, rather. Very strange, when you look at it. I'll tell you what this strategy is called. This book is called Usul Kafi, the Principles of Kafi. Kafi is about the number one. Narrators of the word of the Imam. His book is the most authenticated book. We have many words like that in him. I read you in the page 191 of this book. I'm reading it Persian. I'm going to briefly translate it in English, but it is nice for the Persian speaking people to see it. He says number 3 منصور ابن حازم گوید به امام صادق عرض کردم مرا چیست که از شما مسئله پرسم و به من جوابی دهید به دیگری نزد شما آید و همان مسئله را پرسد و جواب دیگری به وی میدهید. He says Mansur ibn Hazim went to the 6th Imam called Imam Sadiq. He says, what's wrong? What's the problem? That whenever I ask you a question, you give me an answer, and somebody else comes, you give me another different answer. فرمود, the Imam said, ما به مردم به ملاحظه بیش و کم جواب دهیم. عرض کردم به من بفرمایید اصحاب رسول خدا از قول پیغمبر راست گفتن یا دروغ. He said to me that we consider people, based on the consideration, we give them less and more informations. Then he says, to him, tell me that the companion of the Prophet of God, have they tell the truth or lie? Because they brought a lot of this information from Prophet. He said, Imam said, they have tell the truth. Then he says, I said, then what is the reason? پس چه علتی داشته که به اختلاف نقل کردند؟ He said, Imam said, نمیدانی که مردی می آمد که از پیغمبر مسئله می پرسید و به او جوابی میداد، پس از اون به همان مسئله جواب میداد که جواب اول را نسخ میکرد. He says, well, the Prophet of God would say something to them and he would change it and give another one. Therefore, he says, the second answer is what you have to follow because it's cancelling the first one. And again, in the second book, page 193, another one. Zararat ibn A'yan, name of a person, he says, I asked Imam Baqir, the fifth Imam, a question, and he answered me. Then a man came, asked the same questions, and he totally gave him a different answer, exactly opposite to what you gave it to me. The third person came, he gave him a different answer, opposite to the first and second answer. When they left, he said, I asked him, O son of the Prophet of God, two people from Iraq, of your followers, they came here and they asked a question and you gave them different answers. He answered, Imam answered, ای زراره، این محققاً برای ما بهتر است و شما را و ما را پایدار میکند. Definitely this is better for us and for you and it will make us stable, stability of us. What is stability? Because if all of your Shi'ayan, all of your followers, all of you have one vote, one way, one opinion, then the government, the authorities, they would find out that you all have come here and you are united with us. Okay? He said, I told him that if you ask your followers to do anything, put them on a dart, they would go. If you turn them in a fire, they would go for you. And then still you give them different kind of answers. This time he asked not the fifth Imam, the sixth Imam. He says he gave me the same answer as his father gave. So what was their problem? The problem was that after the death of Imam Hussein, the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, basically all these Imams, they were totally minority, very small minority, and they had to be there. So a lot of time, the government, they would send their own spies to come and ask questions from Imam because they wanted to know what Imam is thinking about these things. Imam gave them such a terrible answers. For example, in all the cases, they ask him, who is Imam? How do you recognize him? He says, the Imam feces is like a ship, feces. It's like a pallet. Could you believe Imam said something like that? He did. Because he knew these guys are not after finding the truth anyways. They're out here to investigate, to spy. So he purposely, Imam would have said something to them to save his own life and the life of his followers. People would go to Imam in disguise of selling cucumber, vegetables, and then they knock the door and then they ask their question to get the answer because they were under scrutiny. This way of talking in Islam has a name. It's called taqiyya. It means concealing the truth. It's an official way that a Shiite, if it is cut to be killed, in order to save his life, he could deny his fate. In the Baha'i faith and Baha'i faith is forbidden actually. But in Islam it's allowed. So why did Bab say all these controversial things? All of it is because to save the soul of the people and get the movement of God going. You have to understand the writing of the Bab. Just you look at his writing. He's not a writer. He's not a philosopher. If for philosophy and writing words, God would have to come. A lot of other philosophers and people would do that. Messenger of God is a politician. He's a reformer. He's a doctor. He's a social transformer. He's a lot of things. This guy is not coming to publish some Bible and book among the people and go. He's coming to move the society a step ahead. Therefore, based on the need of the people and where they are, he uses a strategy. It makes totally sense. Every politician do. Every reformer do. All the prophets have done that. And Islam, if you study Islam, a study of the Islam, Muhammad has done millions of things. In the beginning chapters of Quran, it says, tell to the infidels that your religion, yours, mine is mine. Therefore you follow yours and I follow mine. Therefore to each his own. And then when they had more power, he says, حرز المؤمنين على القتال. This is, send the believers and touch them to kill the disbelievers. It's all a strategy. Muhammad had to put up with a lot of things at different times. And the Quran says that on the beginning when he comes, he says he does not preach Islam at all. He preached the religion of Abraham. Apparently Abraham at those days, they had a lot of followers in Mecca. He says whoever does not follow the religion of Islam, of Abraham, is stupid. It says in Quran, Safi, that means imbecile. But then he brought the religion of Islam later himself. So this kind of a strategy, my God, there's so much of it in Islam that a Muslim to come and ask these questions and get wavered that why did Bab said I am the Bab of Imam and then not and then he changed. It's all because you cannot handle the truth. This wasn't to save his own life. Now you might say that, well, this thing is not going to change us. Actually it did, because the strategy worked. This is why Baha'u'llah was not killed. He died for the sake of Baha'u'llah. Because the regime of Iran was scared seriously from Baha'u'llah after the death of the Bab. When they killed the Bab, there was some kind of attack on the Shah, and they thought if they killed Baha'u'llah, there would be for sure terrorizing the whole kingdom. So, scared of this matter, they sent Baha'u'llah, banished him to Iraq, said let him go and his followers away from Iran. We don't want to kill this one. But all of this preparation work was done by the Bab prior to Baha'u'llah, and this was the strategy. The third major difficulties that they try to show, again, people don't know it, is that they try to, the third objection they have is that the writing of the Bab is very awkward. They're right. They're right, depending on what awkward means. Bab uses the word that this McCoy, Dennis McCoy, he says grotesque. I will get it. I will slap this Dennis McCoy right here on this camera about his hypocrisy too. But I'll tell you a few things, a couple of things, so you take it from here. For example, in Arabic language, we have few words that if you have a suffix of ut, ut, or double ut, however you want to pronounce it, at the end of it, it indicates a place of something. For example, nas means people, but if you say nasut, means this world where people live. But malak means an angel. If you add ut to it, say malakut, means the kingdom of God, where the angels are. Using this pattern that is in the Arabic language. Arabic language comes unless any other language. Their grammar, it allows to make new words, not sentences. When we talk grammar in any language rather than Arabic, Arabic is only unique language in the world that allows you to make new words. So, Bob said, good. Now, you have Nasut, Jabarut, Malakut, and Lahut. I'm going to give you a few more. He says, Ilm means knowledge. I'll say Alamut, a place of the knowledge. Kamal means perfection. He says Kamalut, a place of perfections. Baha means glory. He says Bahiyut, the place of the Baha, the kingdom of Abha. That's what Bahiyut means. If you use it. But nobody has heard that. It's totally not acceptable to them because this is not their convenient way. Let me bring you some equal in English. For example, we say evolution and evolving. Now I say evolvement. People say, evolvement? What's that? Oh, well, nothing. I just add the ment at the end of evolve. But that's not an acceptable way in English. There's no such word. But I'm trying to do that. In English language, we do not have a pattern, really. But in Arabic, we do. Like, for example, if you read the book of some of the great scholars of Islam, such as Muhyiddin Arabi, all of a sudden you hear the word kamalut. He uses too. But not as often, definitely. So using the pattern, Bob creates a barrage of the words. I'm not going to get detail into it. But one other time, if I have to talk about one of his books called Pan-Chan, where the book becomes so difficult that it made Dennis McCone says, even Bob didn't know what is he talking about. Well, just shut up, Dennis. You are stupid to say that. Bob didn't know what is he talking about. Of course he knew. If he didn't know, why did he use those patterns to create these new words? Every one of them has a meaning within the pattern. From the word Safa, it's purity, they make a noun called Mustafa. You are Mustafa. It's the pure one, the chosen one. Bob says, okay, you made it from Safa, I'm going to make it from Baha. I'm going to say Mubtaha. But nobody knows what Mubtaha is. But Bob says, you can do it, why not? Even Baha'u'llah, a couple of times he has done it. In Arabic, the words, they come in 3-letter or 4-letter. Most of the verbs and the 4 letters are the repeat of the first 2. For example, zala, earthquake. Sala, alternating. Bala, boiling. Baha'u'llah uses the Persian word, and it uses the Arabic grammar to create words out of Persian language. The word cham means like the hair of a lady when it waves. It's the cham. Baha'u'llah repeats the word chama. We have that, chama, from the waves of the hair. Khama, the bend of the road is a kham. He uses twice, khama. We say in Persian, kham rudkhane, means the bends of the river. Baha'u'llah uses the Arabic construction and he creates the word mutechamchama, mutechamchama. But che does not exist in Arabic. So somebody says, what the hell, what is this? He has to know Arabic grammar, which I'm a master, so I know. When mutachamchama comes and then mutachamchama comes. In Arabic we have mutazalzala, mutasalsala, for the Arabic word, but Baha'u'llah does that. And then they come and say, what is this? He didn't know. Other places in the matter of discussion about the language that they see, they say that, why did Bob bring the Persian word in Arabic? Like the word chop. Chop means to print. Well, the che and the pe does not exist in Arabic. So what do we do? As the Egyptian, for the P, they say B. So you're expecting Bob says not chop, but chob. What did you want him to use for che that doesn't exist in Arabic? Je calls chop job. Well, that totally perverts the word. Or Persian, to the Pope, they say pop. So if Baha'u'llah wants to use Persian or Arabic, actual Arabic word pop, then he has to say to Pope Bob. Well, Pop is not Bob. Bob, we know who Bob is. If you call Pop or Pope, Pop, Persian pronunciation, if you call Pop Bob, that would be totally misleading. Baha'u'llah says time has come to change. I will bring you the letter P in Arabic. Therefore, to the letter to Pop, he says Anya Popan. He doesn't say Anya Boban. That would be funny if he calls the Pope Bob. Because Arab, they can't say P. They say B. So these kind of stupid objections, because Bob did that. Now, you're saying to yourself, why would Bob make it so difficult for his followers? Why wouldn't he just does not follow the grammar? So many afflictions on the Baha'i. These objections that the poor Babis and Baha'is have to come up with an answer. There's a great reason. I'm his elder and I know why. The reason is that God sees the religion has turned into a bunch of words, habitual things. The Muslim guy, just like you're pushing the pedal to stop the car without thinking, without him thinking, he says the word at the prayer. With his other hand, he's thinking how much money he has in the bank and what happened during the day and all that. Bob saw people are into certain habits. The religion, the reality is gone, has turned into habit. And now they want to call their habit the truth, which is not even a shadow of the truth. What would you do? Any one of you. When you go in a society and you see people are cheating, killing, raping, doing anything, but still they're fasting and they're praying along with it. Wouldn't you say that truth is convoluted with all the mischief? What would you do? You change then the prayers. Then you change the words. Because people get out of their habits and they wake up. Muhammad did the same thing. He was praying towards the Holy Land. In the middle of the prayer, he changed his way to Mecca. Most of the people gone. God wanted to get rid of them. Because he knew these guys are coming to him out of habit. Again, same Allahu Akbar, same this and that, and says, well, look. Then our followers, under the new religion, using the old habit, I'm going to kick them on the habits. So he doesn't say Allahu Akbar, say Allahu Abha. He doesn't say Salam Alaikum, say Allahu Abha. Why the word Allahu Abha for Salam Alaikum? Salam Alaikum is very nice. Peace unto you. Allah means God is glorious. I would have preferred the first one myself. But the first one is polluted. Is full of virus. To the Salam Alaikum is attached all kind of things. The word is gone. Time to change. This is the reason, if you want to know, psychological reason. Bob wants to distinguish his followers from those who are saying Salam Alaikum. These are giving their life, and those guys are not. So these are some of the things that he has, some of the reasons, including the strange, sometimes seriously strange rules Bab has. Because it's all transitional. The religion of the Bab is not a fate to stay. It's the story of a journey, not destination. Destination is the Baha'i fate. He says that in my second coming, which is Baha'u'llah. He says in the book. When he comes, which he says it's me, he has the power to revoke everything I said or accept. Baha'u'llah accepted most of the rule of the Bab, which was himself coming back. But many of them he changed. Again, it's a process of cleansing and making it also impossible to follow his religion, simply because he wants to come in a different name. It's very simple, isn't it? It's not difficult. For politicians in the West, they know what this means. So, I answered a few of these things to you. I'm hoping that these answers are useful to you. Let me bring you something before I forget. I found in this book, again, the same book, Usul al-Kafi, this is the this is volume 3 of the same book. It says here, page 135, مسلمانان همه برادرند و خونشان با هم برابر است. All the Muslims are brothers. Their bloods are equal. They're same. Okay? That's what it says. This word is coming from word of the Imams right in this book. Now I'm going to give you the word of a lying Imam. There were many attempts of creating different Imam. One of these Imam that they believe today in Iran that he's still alive. In this book, I'll take it in front of the camera so you can see this book. Okay. In the page 1254, the whole book is called The Promised Mahdi, the translation of the 13th volume of the Bihar al-Anwar, the Oceans of Splendor. Now they're asking this Imam that they claim he's still alive. They asked him questions and he's answering. I'm going to say it in Persian, I'm going to translate it in English for you. و اما این که پرسیده ای شخصی نماز می‌گذارد و آتش و تصویر و چراغ مقابل وی قرار دارد، آیا نمازش صحیح است یا نه؟ و مردم پیش از تو در این خصوص اختلاف داشتند. جواب این است که اگر نمازگزار از اولاد بت پرستان و آتش پرستان نباشد جایز است، ولی اگر از اولاد بت پرستان و آتش پرستان باشد جایز نیست روبروی آنها نماز بگذارد. And the question that was asked, this is translation, and the question that was asked if a person perform obligatory prayer and in front of him there's fire or picture or light or lamp in front of him, whether his prayer is acceptable or not. And people before you had problem in this case, and I give you the answer. This is the answer. This is all translation of this word, paraphrasing it. He says, if the person who's praying, his parents were not Muslims, they were idol worshippers, or they were Zoroastrians, their parents, but he's a Muslim, but his parents were not. If it is not, he came from Muslim parents, it's okay to have a picture in front of him when he's praying. His prayer is okay. But if his parents are not, they were not Muslims, he's not a descendant of a Muslim parents, in that case, his prayer is no good, incorrect. Discriminating Imam. He is discriminating between the Muslims who converted to Islam and those who were born Muslims. This is his word in this book. Would you believe this guy is real? Of course, this is a direct reason that this is a made-up word attributed to a lying Imam. Because the real Imam in this book says all the Muslims are brother. They're all equal. And how come your Imam, the 12th Imam, says some foolish things like this? It's clearly that there were a couple of other people. By the way, it's not bad to know. One is this Ahmad Qadiani. There are big numbers too in Iran. He says, I am both the Christ and the Messiah. And when you read his books, I wish I had it here to show it to you, he says he was a Sikh, one of the Sikh people in India. He says, I was always an infidel. I didn't know what the wrong from the right. And I studied and did and that, and finally I found out Islam, Quran is the right book. Well, how could this fellow be the Imam? The entire philosophy of the Imamate in Islam is that an Imam is immaculate, is infallible. He could not have gone wrong at any point of his time in his life. He's born innocent. And the man who says all his life he was wrong and finally converted to Islam, and now he's the Imam, and he's mixing that I am both Mahdi and Jesus, the both of them combined. What a combo, eh? I'm not so much disturbed by his claim. He was after money, after power. But why people are following it? Okay? The another one was in Sudan, if you heard of him. That was the Imam that Muslims they were expecting, because he had the sword and he was a nationalist and he wanted freedom of Sudan, and General Gordon of England actually died, and then they had to bring another general and take over. I don't know his name. Ahmad Mohammed Muhtamedi something from Sudan. That's another guy that he thought he's the promised one. You wonder, that was the expectation fulfillment of Muslim. It didn't go for him. Let me bring you a couple of other objections that are in those books, that if you ever encounter Muslims, they would bring you. Why did Bab bring a new religion? Muhammad is the last prophet of God. I answered in a few videos before that, the things about that. The other thing also, in all of these books, they're accusing the Baha'is that the Baha'is are not allowed to enter politics. It's a big thing, because Baha'is, they do not enter politics. And they're attacking the Baha'is on this. The answer is very simple. Politics is an ideology limited to the benefit and welfare of a given population in a given country, in contradictions with the other policies of other countries. It's limited. Even if it is good for American, for Canadian, for Iranian. It's not written for all the people of the earth. This is why Baha'is, they don't interfere in it. And it's also controversial. It's limited and controversial. How, as a Baha'i, as a man of God, we follow the politics of Afghanistan against Iran, or Iran against America, or America against Iran? We would not enter any of these politics. We respect it. We actually obey it in any country where the regimes are, as long as they don't interfere in the Baha'i faith and they don't tell us the rule says that you're not a Baha'i, then we don't obey. But if they leave us alone with our faith, which we want to deal with people and fix personal problem of the people, they are very well aware how to fix their economical and social problem. most of the time anyways. But personal problem, a spiritual problem that's a family problem that others can't fix. This is where Baha'i faith and Baha'u'llah comes. Now, am I going to differentiate between a Finnish and a Chilean and Americans? How then can I be man of God if I do that? What God do I believe? The God of Quran says that truth is neither from the West nor from the East. It says that. This is why simple, that the Baha'is cannot interfere in the politics, go to the elected in the Congress of United States, or in the House of Commons in Canada, or in the Majlis of Iran. Because if we get there, we will have to follow that protocol, which is against the other people in the earth. We can't do that. That's why. Okay? So, these kind of objections that has been brought towards the Baha'i faith by the Muslim scholars in a very dirty, nasty ways, progressively, from the beginning was philosophical, then it became political and social, and at the end of the day, is very simple, my dears. There is not a single man in Iran or in any religion in the world that does not speak the word of the truth unless he's after money or power. Show me one who's not. Baha'is are not, categorically, all of them in the world. They do not write book to become famous. There is no room for being famous. Baha'is are coming by election. So individuals in power. And they don't write books about any other subject. They're writing books about the Baha'i faith. Who's going to read it? Who's going to see it? It's a total sacrifice of their money, their time. These are the only people, they don't do it for money. Every one of you guys do. But still you can't see it with your eyes. I'm asking today the questions. All the Muslim scholars in the world, find me. Find me one 25 years old man in Iran that could convert close to 1 million people of his time and made 25,000 of people offer their life for him. What kind of a magic he had? Do you think it just can be summarized in words? By listening to somebody's words, a person is willing to die? Think about it. What would make 20,000 of Iranians, some 150 years ago, to die for a youth of 25 years old? The people that were divines in the religions, they were clergies, they were writers, they were all intelligent. This you can't deny because it's written in all of your books, non-Baha'i books, that so many people died for Bab. Do you think that can be summarized by words? That you are trying to find deficiency in the words of Bab? I'll tell you, brothers, when it comes to death, I've faced it several times. Every man turns to a philosopher. All the stories that last night you're playing up about me doing this, when the shackle goes your hand and your leg, then you start to philosophize. Should I die? Should I not die? Many of them in recent years in Iran, couple thousands of them. Sound people, like Dr. Kambiz Sadegzadeh, like Dr. Naji. Huge guys, who have money and everything. They died. What makes a person? What do they see? If you know somebody at age 25, can enchant and enamor people of a high class of society to die for his truth. Because death is not a joke. You know it, and I know it. Where did you find a power like that? Show me. People go to fight and war to win. Che Guevara was going to kill. He was not going, presuming that he's going to die. Nobody. But these people, they knew they were going to die. Their numbers very small compared to this ferocious enemy. Read the account of the worker in the embassy of Austria. He says, I am kept myself in prison in the cell, in my office, because of such a brutal way that is new inventions. Like torturing the followers of the Bab. Shoe horses they put in their leg, and then they tell them to walk, and as they can't walk, they slash them, lash them big, so their head together, and then they cut them into pieces. Dying is not that easy, but getting tortured like that, I know I can't do it. Simple death, I could go for it, but torturing me, I don't think I can do it. And I know myself. I'm selfless in what I say. But I think of them. What gives this energy to them? What kind of a photon of reality excited those electrons? That ordinary people rise to this level of sacrifice by the word of one youth called the Bab. If you found anything like that in the world, let me know, because I would give up the Baha'i faith. But I found, my friend, there is none. This is why I'm a Baha'i, because I cannot find an answer for it. I'm enchanted and enamored with it. But I cannot find what would that word is. They are not these words, what you read in the book. The spirit that carries through the words. Many people say sit down, but when your mother asks you to sit down, when your mother asks, the same word is different from anybody else. When your beloved is asking you something, the same word, it's not the same word. It carries a spirit because of the relationship. What kind of a relationship people, ordinary people in Iran had with Bab, the one who have not seen him even. Haven't seen him. He's in jail all the time. What energy is out there? This is what you're missing. You have to contemplate on this. Then you will go beyond words and find words are those that are dying and dead in front of us. 20,000 of them. If you get the history of the Baha'i faith right now, it's right from the floor to the ceiling, because that many books are out there about how these people, they died. And they accepted it willingly. All of them, they had a choice, no condemnations. They were all having a choice. Just to repent that you're not a Baha'i or a Babi, we let you go. And they said, no, we can't. What did they see? What did they encounter? I know what it is. This is why I am 35 years on the issue and I can't give up. Because every minute of it is pleasure. Every minute of it. It is such an ecstasy that I have been allowed to speak about Bab. That the creator of the universe chose to be one of us. Among us he walked. Can you imagine what it is? What alien movies? What science fiction? Think about that. The actual fashioner of all this universe. Which all of it is not even a 1%. I cannot say even it's 1% of a bigger reality which we can never know. Not at least now. And he chose to come here and walk on this planet Earth with us. And I have the honor to know his name. The word he uttered, I can see in the book. You're dealing with the promised one of all the civilizations. And you're trying to encounter him with these words and objections. Some of you are making money out of it. I give it to you. You have a reason. But those of you who are not in making money about these things, yet following it, why, brothers? Why? Why? Think about it. Allahu Akbar.